The Capitol dome shimmered under the blazing afternoon sun as the House Oversight Committee hearing kicked off in full force, packed with reporters, aides, and a gallery of restless spectators who sensed the political powder keg about to erupt. Seated at the center of the dais was Representative Neely Kennedy, a silver-haired, hawk-eyed conservative firebrand from Alabama, known as much for his sharp tongue as his relentless cross-examinations. Across from him sat Representative Jasmine Crockett, the rising star from Texas, with a firebrand reputation of her own. Young, brilliant, and unafraid, she leaned back in her chair with her arms crossed, her eyes fixed steadily on Kennedy. The hearing was meant to address ethics violations related to private security contracts and misuse of federal funds. But it had devolved, as many anticipated, into a battlefield for personal and ideological warfare. Kennedy, who had the floor, had spent the past 5 minutes weaving an insidious line of questioning, cloaked in bureaucratic formalism but laced with venom. "Congresswoman Crockett," he began again, tapping his microphone with theatrical deliberation, "if you could tell us, using as few syllables as possible for your own sake, what constitutes an acceptable federal audit protocol?" Laughter scattered through the room. The jab was unmistakable. Crockett blinked once, slowly, and then leaned forward, her expression unreadable. "Are you mocking my intelligence, Representative Kennedy?" she asked. Her voice was calm, devoid of emotion, but the room immediately quieted, as if it collectively held its breath. Kennedy smirked, unfazed. "I'm simply trying to ensure clarity for all members present. Some of us have degrees in law, economics, and national security. We didn't all waltz into politics via reality TV soundbites and social media tirades." He shrugged theatrically. "I mean, we do need to verify that everyone on this committee understands the material at hand, especially those prone to confusing Twitter likes for legislative merit." Gasps trickled from the gallery. Even some aides stirred uncomfortably behind their bosses. Crockett leaned in further, now just inches from her microphone. "You know what's fascinating about you, Mr. Kennedy?" she said, each word deliberate, scalpel, sharp. "You sit up here pretending to be a patriot, but everything about you reeks of fear. You're afraid of women like me, not because I'm unintelligent, but because I'm not afraid of you." Her words landed like bricks. A low murmur erupted across the chamber. Kennedy opened his mouth to respond, but she held up a finger. "No, you had your turn. Now it's mine." Crockett stood up, gathering the attention of every pair of eyes in the room. "Let me be clear. I passed the bar the first time. I've defended death penalty cases in courtrooms where the stakes were higher than your pension. And unlike you, I didn't need to step on anyone to climb. I earned my seat. You inherited yours on the back of backroom deals and handshakes that smelled like old money and bourbon." The crowd was no longer murmuring. Now they were fully electrified. C-SPAN's live feed surged in viewers, Twitter exploded into hashtags. Kennedy flushed red but tried to retain composure. "That's rich," he scoffed. "Coming from someone who thinks equity is a replacement for effort." He turned toward the chairman. "Mr. Chair, are we going to allow this kind of grandstanding?" But the chairman, a veteran moderate from Illinois, merely leaned back, lips tight, letting the storm play out. Crockett didn't miss a beat. "Grandstanding," she repeated, stepping away from her seat now, her voice gaining traction like a preacher mid-sermon. "You've built an entire career on soundbites and dog whistles. You think just because you hide your disdain behind long sentences and fake smiles that people won't hear what you're really saying. You think because I wear braids and I don't talk like your Ivy League donors that I don't belong here." Her voice cracked. Not from emotion, but from sheer volume. "You called me unintelligent. Let me tell you what intelligence looks like. Intelligence is surviving a system that was built to break you. Intelligence is building legislation that protects people who'll never have the luxury of sipping bourbon with lobbyists after hours. Intelligence is knowing how to fight without becoming what you're fighting against." By now, even some of Kennedy's usual allies were shifting uncomfortably in their seats, avoiding eye contact. Kennedy tried to interject again, this time visibly shaken. "Congresswoman, Don't," Crockett snapped, her finger raised again. "Don't interrupt me when you spent 15 minutes trying to discredit me with smirks and smogness. You don't get to play victim now." The chairman finally cleared his throat, tapping the gavel lightly. "Order," he said, almost half-heartedly. "Let's maintain professional decorum." But decorum was a dead language in that room now. Kennedy tried to salvage anything. "You speak of fear, Congresswoman. But perhaps you should be fearing irrelevance. You stand on theatrics while the rest of us are here to legislate." Crockett turned, slow and deliberate, her eyes burning into him. "Theatrics," she whispered. "You know what's theatrical. A man who wraps himself in the flag while stabbing the working class in the back. A man who acts like he's the second coming of Reagan, but can't name a single community he's actually helped." She leaned in one last time, almost whispering now. "You came for me thinking I'd break. But you forgot, I was forged in fire you've never even felt." The silence that followed was louder than any applause. Kennedy stared at her stunned. His lips parted, but no sound came. And then, slowly, as if on cue, several members of the audience stood, quietly, one after another. No claps. No cheers. Just a solemn recognition that something had shifted. Something had broken and rebuilt itself in front of them. As the chairman attempted to resume the hearing, the focus was irrevocably gone. Reporters already had their headlines drafted. Staffers whispered feverishly. Even opposing members now looked at Crockett with a wary new respect. Or fear. Kennedy sat rigid, staring down at his notes, no longer smirking. Crockett walked slowly back to her seat, picked up her papers, and turned not to the chairman, not to Kennedy, but to the press gallery, where the cameras blinked like hungry eyes. She said nothing more, no summary, no closing line. Just a piercing look, then a nod. With that, she gathered her bag and walked out, not in protest, not in defeat, but in declaration. The chamber watched her exit like a final act in a Shakespearean tragedy, where the fool was finally unmasked and the underestimated heroine took her curtain call. Kennedy remained behind, alone at the desk, still holding his pen, as if writing anything could undo what had just unfolded. But the ink had already dried. The moment was hers. Outside the chamber, the air was electric. Reporters swarmed like hornets, bombarding Jasmine Crockett with questions as she strode down the long marble corridor. But she didn't break stride. Her chief of staff, Eliana Monroe, a tall woman with sharp eyes and a Bluetooth headset glued to her ear, was already fielding calls from CNN, MSNBC, and The Hill. "We need to prep for Maddow," Eliana said, briskly walking beside her. "They want you live in 30. Jasmine gave a small nod, her face unreadable. "No soft angles," she said. "If they ask me to tone it down, I'm not going." Inside, though, she was burning, not just with righteous anger, but with calculation. She'd held her own, yes, but she knew Kennedy wasn't finished. He wasn't the type to let public humiliation go unanswered. "He's going to come for you," Eliana said, echoing her thoughts. "Whispers already. He's trying to file an ethics complaint." Jasmine smirked, pushing open the door to her office. "Let him. I've got audio, video, and God on my side." But just as they entered, a familiar figure was already seated inside Representative Malcolm Trent, Kennedy's longtime ally and political hitman. "What the hell is this?" Jasmine asked, pausing mid-step. Trent stood, buttoning his blazer. "Jasmine, I came to offer guidance. You've stirred the pot. Now the kitchen's on fire." His voice was silky, polished. "I'm not sure your little show today helped your long-term viability." She crossed her arms. "So they sent you to clean it up?" she asked. "Is this the part where I'm supposed to be afraid?" Trent gave a chuckle that didn't reach his eyes. "No, this is the part where you understand how the game is really played. Kennedy's drafting a censure motion. It won't pass. But it'll poison your next bill. Every committee you sit on will stall your agenda. Your district will suffer." Eliana stepped forward. "Are you threatening her constituents now?" Trent ignored her. "You're smart, Jasmine. Fiery. That works on TikTok. But here, in these halls, that gets you cornered. You can win a headline or you can win votes, but rarely both." Jasmine stepped closer, her eyes narrowed. "You want me to apologize? You want me to say that I overreacted, that I misinterpreted him? Is that it?" Trent raised an eyebrow. "Would settle for a statement of decorum. Something to cool the flames." She didn't blink. "Tell Kennedy he picked the wrong woman to try and intimidate. I don't shrink, and I don't kneel. You and your little boys' club can keep playing chess. I'll be busy flipping the board." Trent's smirk vanished for the first time. He took a slow breath. "Very well. But don't say you weren't warned." He brushed past them, his cologne hanging in the air like smoke after a shot fired. Back on the House floor 2 days later, the drama detonated. Kennedy returned, emboldened by whispers and backroom promises. With a smile that barely disguised his vendetta, he formally introduced a censure motion against Jasmine Crockett for unprofessional conduct and inflammatory rhetoric. The chamber murmured as he read the motion aloud, each word a carefully sharpened dagger. Jasmine stood silently as he spoke, flanked by allies but surrounded by wolves. Then, the chairman gestured for her response. She stepped forward, unflinching. "Ladies and gentlemen of this chamber," she began, her voice cool but resonant. "I stand here not as someone who regrets what I said, but as someone who regrets that it needed to be said at all." She let the silence stretch. "Mr. Kennedy's censure isn't about decorum. It's about power. About putting women, especially women of color, back in their place." Audible discomfort rippled through the room. He didn't censure the representative who called immigrants vermin. He didn't censure the one who joked about lynchings. But he censors me, because I refuse to smile while being insulted. The room stirred now with audible shifts in posture and attention. "If you censure me for defending my intelligence, for standing up to bullies masquerading as patriots, then what you're really censoring is truth." She looked directly at Kennedy. "You wanted to humiliate me. Instead, you reminded every young woman watching this chamber who they're really up against." A sudden voice broke from the back. Representative Letitia Morales, a centrist from Arizona who rarely spoke during conflict. "Point of order, Mr. Chairman," she said, rising. "I move to strike the censure from the floor and instead open an ethics review of the original remarks made by Representative Kennedy." Gasps and murmurs exploded like a dam breaking. Even Kennedy seemed caught off guard. "What are you doing?" He snapped at her across the aisle. Morales didn't flinch. "I've had enough of the hypocrisy. If this chamber wants to claim integrity, it starts with holding everyone accountable. Not just the loud ones, but the smug ones too." Within minutes, the chamber spiraled into procedural chaos. Members shouting, aides scribbling furiously, the chairman slamming his gavel over and over. Jasmine didn't speak again. She simply watched as the same system that sought to shame her began to buckle under the weight of its own rot. Kennedy was shouting something unintelligible into the mic, red-faced and shaking, as a bipartisan wave slowly gathered behind Morales. The original censure collapsed before it reached a vote. Kennedy stormed out, and as Jasmine turned to leave the chamber, her eyes locked briefly with his. Just long enough to let him see the future. It did not belong to him. But the twist wasn't over. As Jasmine reached her office that evening, her phone buzzed with a call from a blocked number. She almost ignored it, then picked up. A gruff voice, disguised and mechanical, spoke only once. "Careful. There's more than one way to silence a rising voice." The line went dead. Eliana, seated on the couch scrolling through the explosion of media coverage, looked up. "Something wrong?" Jasmine didn't answer immediately. Her mind spun. She'd faced bullies before, but this was different. This was darker, bigger, calculated. She walked to the window and stared out at the city glowing beneath the dusk. "They're not playing fair anymore," she murmured. Iana stood, suddenly alert. "Then we don't play safe," she said. Jasmine turned slowly, fire in her eyes. "No, we play smart, we bring receipts. We build alliances. We don't just fight back, we fight forward." As the sun set over Washington, D.C., Jasmine Crockett knew she hadn't just survived a political attack. She'd triggered a war. And while Kennedy had walked away that afternoon drenched in the stench of defeat, somewhere deep in the halls of power, another force was preparing to move. The old guard was bleeding, and it had just realized the new wave wasn't asking for permission. They were taking the whole damn table.